Is Caitlin Clark sending a message to Stephanie White, Amber Cox, Kelly Krauskopf, and the Indiana Fever? A message could be being delivered. Many people are speculating with this bold move that Caitlin Clark just made ahead of her game versus the New York Liberty. Also, it looks like Leah Boston might be held out. Who cares? The girl don't pass the ball to Caitlin Clark anymore. She don't set screens, all of this stuff. And it's clear as day through the video footage that Caitlin Clark is still being sabotaged by the WNBA.
Time to face reality, guys. Caitlin Clark is the biggest thing to hit basketball in decades, single-handedly rewriting the WNBA's future, shattering viewership records. And yet somehow her own team, the Indiana Fever, is at the center of a growing scandal. Fans have become part-time detectives, part-time coaches, and full-time conspiracy theorists, connecting dots that paint a shocking picture. Are the Fever and head coach Stephanie White making their biggest superstar look strangely expendable? The evidence piling up is getting impossible to ignore, suggesting something far more sinister than just bad coaching is happening behind the scenes.
Guys, this is why we watch. 37 points, 10 assists, 13 of 24 from the field. She was 8 of 12 from behind the arc. Let me repeat myself. Caitlin Clark was 8 of 12 from behind the three-point line. Just an unthinkable performance. And I mean, early on, she was turning the ball over, and it seemed like she was on track for maybe not one of her best performances. But the aspect to Caitlin Clark's game that nobody else has is the daggum shot making from behind.
Look, sometimes the loudest message in professional sports isn't spoken at a podium. It's not typed into a tweet, and it's certainly not found in a press release. Sometimes, the real story, the brutal truth, is delivered through substitution patterns that bench a superstar during crunch time, through a basketball that stays stubbornly out of her hands possession after possession, and through open shots that never materialize because her teammates simply look the other way. This isn't just about a few bad plays. This is about a pattern so consistent, so jarring, that it feels like a deliberate strategy.
Somebody that likes to feel like I am the voice of the people, the voice of the fandom. I like to take the temperature, not rectally, of the fan base. That's not happening. Some kind of a more less intrusive kind of way. Oh, Caitlin Clark fans are not happy. I saw Stephanie White's name trending, and I was like, click. Got to.
And let me tell you, that is precisely the story unfolding in Indiana right now. It centers on a rookie phenomenon who has single-handedly changed the trajectory of an entire league, only to find herself watching key minutes from the sideline. While the rest of the basketball world is clamoring for more Caitlin Clark, her own franchise seems determined to prove it doesn't need her as much as everyone believes, constructing a narrative where their star is, shockingly, not the focal point. This isn't just a team struggling. This is a team actively working against its own best interest, or so it seems.
Hey, have you heard the Indiana Fever are back? That's right. They destroyed Chicago tonight, 113-90. And consider the circumstances, okay? They played Saturday night in Brooklyn. They didn't arrive into Chicago until 3 this morning, and they were finishing their 5th road game in the last 8 days. But apparently nobody told Caitlin Clark she was supposed to be exhausted and tired. She was not. Caitlin Clark was Indiana's most consistent force from beginning to end. She set the tone early. She controlled the pace. She made the entire offense go for Indiana. This is what the Fever looks like when everything runs through Caitlin.
Caitlin Clark has spent this entire season rewriting what people thought was even possible for a first-year player in the WNBA. She's faced every challenge, every target on her back, every physical defender, and she's still delivered. And yet somehow, the Indiana Fever have managed to construct a situation where her fit within the organization looks shakier than ever. It's not just about wins and losses anymore. It's about a systematic undermining that's making fans question everything, and the implications for her future and the League's are absolutely massive.
Caitlin Clark introducing the Statue of Liberty edition, the New York Liberty edition. I already know you damn near besties with Sabrina. We think you cool with Lexi. No, you go way back with Sabrina. Caitlin Clark could be sending a message to the Indiana Fever. Hey, I might not sign that epic. Y'all pushing everybody else for MVP. Stephanie White is having tantrums every time I shoot the ball. She's falling over herself on the sideline.
But here's where it gets absolutely wild. Before a recent matchup against the New York Liberty, eyebrows shot up across the entire basketball world when Clark stepped out wearing a custom Liberty-themed colorway of her own signature shoe. Now, on the surface, you could try to dismiss it as nothing more than a marketing rollout, another sneaker drop designed to sell a product. But context, my friends, context matters, and the timing here is impossible to ignore. This wasn't just any shoe reveal. It was a Statue of Liberty-inspired design, draped in New York's colors, unveiled right before Indiana welcomed one of the most talent-loaded rosters in the league to their building. Whether intentional or not, it read like a signal, a flashing red light, and once fans started connecting the dots, they found plenty more evidence to support the theory that Clark's patience with her current situation is wearing thinner than a paper napkin. To understand why a shoe colorway could spark this much speculation, you have to look at what has actually been happening on the court in Indiana, because the on-court reality tells a story that's far more concerning than any sneaker campaign. We're talking about head coach Stephanie White parking Clark on the bench for stretches of the second half during games where every possession mattered, every basket carried weight. Not because of foul trouble, not because of injury, simply removed from the game at a moment when Indiana desperately needed her most.
Stephanie White is actively sabotaging Caitlin Clark's career, and we're all just watching and nothing's happening. They're running a ball screen. Why on God's green earth is Aaliyah Boston not setting the ball screen? So if they switch, you got a big and John Kell Jones switching onto Caitlin Clark.
Like, look at this. Look, pass the ball, pass the ball, pass the ball. Look, Caitlin wide open, clank, pathetic. Well, let's watch it again one more time. Look, Caitlin's wide open, nobody's on her. Look, this is pathetic.
For a franchise whose ticket sales, whose television ratings, and whose entire national relevance have all been built squarely on the back of this one player, benching her during winnable, high-stakes moments sends a message that's almost impossible to unpack in any positive light. And it isn't just about the minutes on the clock. It's about what happens during the minutes she is actually out there. Time and time again, possessions have unfolded where Clark stands wide open beyond the arc, completely unguarded, literally calling for the ball, only to watch her teammates look the other way, passing it to anyone but her. This isn't a one-game anomaly or a fluke sequence caught on a bad night. Fans have tracked it possession after possession, game after game, and the pattern holds. The player with arguably the greatest shooting range in franchise history, the player defenses fear the most, is actively being iced out of the offense. And it's not just the players. General Manager Amber Cox has faced intense scrutiny for the way this supporting cast was assembled around a generational talent capable of elevating almost anyone she shares the floor with. A draft pick spent on Raven Johnson, for example, raised legitimate questions about roster priorities, and the coaching hire of Stephanie White, brought in with plenty of fanfare, simply hasn't translated into the kind of results or chemistry many expected.
After last night's performance, in which Caitlin Clark turned in arguably her worst game ever, the one thing I did notice last night was the lack of running and gunning that we had seen over the last, 12 games or so? No, the Fever have been hot. They've been real hot. Till last night when cold water was thrown all over.
Instead, there's a growing perception that the Indiana organization has quietly shifted its internal spotlight toward Kelsey Mitchell, positioning her as the face of team success in ways that seem to sideline the very player driving the league's attention toward Indiana in the first place. When a front office appears to be building the narrative around someone other than its biggest draw, players notice, and so do fans. It creates an awkward, undeniable tension. Speaking of transparency, or the absolute lack of it, Indiana's handling of injury information has become its own running storyline. Aaliyah Boston's status heading into recent matchups has been murky at best, with vague updates and shifting explanations that have left fans and analysts guessing rather than informed. When an organization struggles to be upfront about something as basic as a player's health status, it becomes harder to trust their explanations about lineup decisions, offensive philosophy, or anything else tied to Clark's controversial usage. But wait, it gets worse.
Become an unmitigated disaster for Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever as they play versus the Chicago Sky. I'm disgusted going into this game. I think this could be another debacle. There is a chance this team could lose. Sydney Taylor's playing today. And the way we just dropped the ball back-to-back games, Caitlin Clark is playing small forward up until damn near the fourth quarter. Aaliyah Boston's the new point guard. I don't know what is going to happen.
Perhaps the most damning piece of evidence in this entire saga comes not from roster decisions or shoe colorways, but from the officiating itself and the coaching response to it, or rather, the glaring asterisk absence of one. Game film from recent matchups shows a level of physicality directed at Clark that borders on the absurd. Night after night, she's been shoved, grabbed, held, and hit on nearly every possession, with defenders draping their forearms across her body as she tries to navigate screens and cut through traffic. In one particular sequence, she was hit with such force attempting to work through a pick that it looked less like a basketball possession and more like a linebacker meeting a running back in the open field. The comparison isn't an exaggeration. Anyone who watches the clip can see a player getting physically dismantled without a single whistle blowing in her favor. This isn't an isolated incident either. Breakdown after breakdown of game footage shows defenders reaching across her body, grabbing her arm as she tries to shoot, and shoving her in the back as she fights through screens, all without a whistle. In one sequence, a defender's hand is pulled off Clark's body not once, not twice, but 3 separate times before contact is finally deemed worthy of a foul call. Even then, the whistle comes only after the damage has already been done to the possession. In another clip, a defender reaches her entire arm across Clark's body in a move so blatant that it would draw an automatic foul call for virtually any other player in the league. Instead, officials let it slide, and the game continues as though nothing happened. Across an entire 40-minute contest, Clark reportedly didn't attempt a single free throw, despite absorbing contact on drive after drive that would typically send most players to the line multiple times a game. And this leads us to the most baffling part.
Y'all just seen what happened when Caitlin Clark scored 30-plus points. We actually win the basketball game. You see what happens when you give Caitlin Clark the ball? We win the basketball game. So you let me know if they trying to sabotage Caitlin. But at this point, it don't even matter because Caitlin Clark, I believe, has passed up Alyssa Thomas with assists. Oh, yes. Another one.
What makes this pattern of physical abuse even harder to stomach is the reaction, or the complete lack asterisk thereof, from the Indiana Fever sideline. As Clark absorbed hit after hit without protection from the officials, her own head coach, Stephanie White, stood largely silent. There was no aggressive pushback, no heated exchange with officials demanding accountability, no visible fight on behalf of a player being physically punished on national television. Stephanie White, known throughout her broadcasting career and coaching tenure for being incredibly vocal and animated, seemed to reserve her energy for reacting to Clark's own shot attempts, rather than defending her from the physical toll being inflicted by opposing defenses. It's a jarring contradiction. A coach who has no problem showing visible frustration when her star player pulls up for a three-pointer, yet stays remarkably composed while that same player gets tackled without a whistle in sight. This dynamic has not gone unnoticed by the fan base, and it's fueling growing frustration directed squarely at the head coach. When a coach isn't standing up for their player, whether it's by designing effective schemes or fighting for calls from officials, then loyalty from that player starts to look less earned and more one-sided. Fans have made their feelings clear, and the boos raining down during recent home games suggest that patience with White's leadership is running thinner than the organization might want to admit.
Neglect Kelsey Money Mitch. She came alive in that second half. 30 points. She shot it 6 of 9 from behind the arc. I mean, this Fever backcourt was absolutely insane. We're going to get into it all today, but mind you, this is on the heels of everybody kind of crashing out on Caitlin Clark. She missed the clutch free throws. They're saying she choked. You saw the Indiana Fever playing too much iso ball, and everybody kind of comes out and they condemn the team, and I get it. It doesn't look like the Fever that we have been accustomed to.
All of this paints a picture that's incredibly difficult to interpret as mere coincidence. We're talking about a star player who elevates every single metric a franchise cares about, benched during winnable games. We're talking about a supporting cast that repeatedly ices her out of the offense during crucial possessions, despite her being wide open. We're talking about a front office that has drawn criticism for questionable roster construction and a stunning lack of transparency around injuries. And we're talking about a coaching staff that consistently fails to fight for calls or defend its franchise cornerstone from increasingly physical, borderline dangerous defensive treatment. When you stack all these pieces together, side by side, it becomes far less surprising that speculation about Clark's future has intensified. And honestly, it makes it far more understandable why a shoe colorway themed around another franchise's colors could spark this much conversation. New York, for what it's worth, has built an undeniable reputation across multiple sports for finding ways to attract star talent to its city. And the Liberty roster already boasts players who have publicly expressed admiration for Clark's game and personality. Whether that connection ever moves beyond speculation remains to be seen. But the groundwork for that kind of narrative doesn't need much imagination given absolutely everything happening in Indiana right now.
Tracks multiple defenders, creates space for everybody else. She turns Indiana into an offensive machine. Then Kelsey Mitchell woke up in the second half, and boy, she was spectacular. Once Mitchell found her rhythm, Chicago had no answer. Clark controlled the game from the start. Mitchell, well, blew it open after halftime. And now we have a really fascinating MVP situation. Some voters may look at Mitchell's scoring and say, that's my MVP, she's a scorer.
If this pattern continues, more fans, more analysts, and perhaps even more voices inside that very locker room will start asking the same uncomfortable question that's already spreading like wildfire across social media. How much longer can this dynamic hold before something has to give? And if it does, if Caitlin Clark decides she's had enough, will Indiana be the one left explaining what went wrong, watching their golden goose walk away after they themselves seemingly sabotaged her?
The Indiana Fever won yesterday, and nobody is talking about it. Nobody cares about it because we're only here for Caitlin Clark. Oh my God, AB played well. Yeah. And? Oh my gosh, Kelsey Mitchell. Yeah. And? The Indiana Fever. They just keep stepping in it.
The frustration brewing among Fever supporters isn't just about wins and losses either, because plenty of teams struggle through growing pains during a rebuild.